Hello and welcome to another episode of The Only Playbook. I'm your host, Sweetcar. Alongside me is my co-host, Shashot. No Shovit today. He's too busy 21 piloting it up. He's missed the best episode that we've ever recorded, episode 69. So big milestone there for The Only Playbook. Again, we're so excited to recap all of week one. So much action, finally a full weekend of games. Shashot, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Took a big L in our league, so that kind of sucks.
Dude.
But, you know, it's about the long game, right? It's about the long game, so we're just going to hold on tight, and hopefully nobody scores as many points as our opponents do.
Dude, it sucks because I was looking at the scores, and obviously it's all matchup based. Like I think both of us would have won like 4 out of the 10 teams if we played against. Some teams scored like crazy low. Ishan's team went off for like 170, but like you said, we're in the end game. We know week one doesn't mean anything. I'm pretty sure I lost both my leagues week one last year too. So it is what it is. As long as Mike Williams doesn't completely disappear, which really, really terrifies me here early on, I think I'll be okay.
You know what's funny is in my other 2 leagues, I have 3 leagues, and the league that we're in, I thought I had the strongest team. I ended up having the lowest points in that. And then in a league where I had Waddle starting, I drafted Mahomes early. I had, Cordero Patterson as my RB2. Like, I ended up scoring the most points out of all 3 leagues total in that league. So it's like, you can get all the stats you want. You can be, call yourself whatever, like, as good as you think you are at doing this. At the end of the day, like, things just happen.
Yeah, and the other side of that is exactly right. Like, we're not going to go back and be like, damn, we should have drafted Jalen Waddle or drafted Cordell Patterson early.
Right.
Like, it's one week, and so obviously people are going to overreact. But I think because it's a long game, over time, the numbers say that like they should even out, and the players that we think will do well, I mean, in theoretically should do well. So again, it sucks not to start the season off with the win. At least our Vikes got the dub, so there's like some silver lining to the first week of the season. But otherwise, at least Shovit's not on, so he can shit talk me all he wants. He missed the perfect episode. So we're gonna recap week one here. Let's kick things off with water cooler talk. Now that the season's officially underway, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of like big news, obviously, unless players get traded, firings, things like that. So mostly what water cooler talk is probably going to be is just a lot of injuries, because injuries are going to be so prevalent in fantasy football and just in football as a whole. And it's something we absolutely hate as football fans and as fantasy fans, but it's something that is inevitable, right? So every year there's going to be injuries, and, we've only had week one and one weekend of games, but there's already so many injuries to go through. So let's run through these real quickly. Feel free to chime in with anything where applicable, but I'll just run through these real quickly. Rondale Moore didn't play week one. Definitely looked that way for the Cardinals wide receiver core. They were struggling to get the offense going, but it does look like he's going to practice on Wednesday. So it'll be nice for them to get him back and kind of utilize him as a Swiss Army knife that he is. Jamal Adams, safety for the Seahawks, suffered a serious quad injury on Monday night. He didn't look good. I don't know what the results say so far, but it does not look like he's going to play anytime soon.
He's not playing this year.
No. You think he's out for season?
Yeah, he tore his quadriceps muscle, like tendon, I believe, which is like you can't recover from that at least for a year. Like, he's screwed.
Okay. Well, yeah. So Jamal Adams, sayonara to the Seattle defense, or kind of what was the biggest mainstay of that defense now. Dak Prescott, my fantasy quarterback in my other league, totally shit the bed. But he did get hurt as well. Yeah, I think he broke his thumb following through on a couple of throws. It looked like back-to-back throws. He actually got his hand hit. And so broken thumb, initially they were saying like, maybe out for season. Then they were saying like 8 to 10 weeks. And now Jerry Jones came out and said like he's not even going to go on the IR. So like, I don't really know what to make of that.
Yeah, it's weird because immediately before the game was even over, I got a notification saying, well, actually, no, like 10 minutes after the game was over, I already had a notification saying Dak Prescott out for season from Jerry Jones. I'm like, I get you're the owner and everything, but stop making those kind of decisions like on live TV, telling people that he's out for season. It's a thumb injury. You got to be able to grab the football with the thumb. You can't.
And it's the throwing hand. Yeah. And
it's a throwing hand. So it's a big deal. This is going to be a wait and see process. I would highly recommend trying to like trade to a Cowboys fan. Just an oblivious one, not like a logical one where there's a lot of those. So we should be good. But yeah, so it's on the throwing hand and it is a thumb and it is broken. So that's going to take over the normal broken bone phase, normal broken bone in a non-joint area, 6 weeks, you'll be back. Right. But it is in the thumb and I don't know exactly where it is. It's a small area. It could take much longer than expected. It could be quicker than expected. So we're going to have to find out more throughout the next few weeks.
Yeah. And as a quarterback, you're using the thumb to like grip the bottom of the football and keep it stable. So if he's not like 100% power on that, like it's going to affect his his hand. I mean, it's going to affect grasping the football. So not good news for the Cowboys. Really shitty start for them. Really unfortunate start for Dak, but we'll see kind of how quickly he can recover. T. Higgins left the game early against the Steelers on Sunday, headed into concussion protocol, and he was officially ruled out for the game. Concussion protocol, typically 7 to 10 days. So there may be a chance he misses this upcoming week as well. That's definitely something to monitor as the week progresses.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. It's just the concussion. I know it sucks. Long term, it's really bad, but short term is all we really care about as fantasy players. So as soon as he's back, he's full go.
Keenan Allen pulled mid-game with a hamstring injury. God, we hate hearing hamstring, especially with like older players that run a lot.
Yeah.
You know, Keenan Allen's known for his like twitchy route running abilities, and hamstring's like the worst thing for him. And so unlikely to play on short rest because they have to turn around and play on Thursday night here in 2 days. So I doubt he's playing. But again, the hamstring for a receiver that is known to run great routes, like you probably want that thing to be 100%. So that doesn't bode well for him. Chris Godwin, you know, sitting on the injury report all offseason, you know, miraculously good to go and started his game, sideline mid-game with a hamstring. So luckily it wasn't the same thing that he got injured over the offseason. I think he tore his ACL. So this is a hamstring. It's another receiver. It's another slot receiver that runs routes. So like having that ability to quick twitch and change direction is going to be key. So that is probably going to be something to watch out for. It could be nagging. Najee Harris exited the game with a foot injury. I know he was dealing with the Liz Frank. So I don't know if that's kind of what was re-aggravated or what not, but Najee did come out after the game and told reporters he's going to practice and play week 2. So I don't know if that's a lot of the adrenaline that's pumping or him just being like, I can get through it. Or if there's more severity to that. Elijah Mitchell, another guy that was lingering on the injury reports before the season started. Now it looks like he's going to miss multiple weeks with a knee injury. So that's, you know, kind of been the story for the 49ers over the last several years, but it doesn't really matter when you have the 49ers running back committee. Anybody that can come in there and step in and do the job. So Jeff Wilson's probably going to be very, very popular on waivers. We'll probably touch more on that later. And obviously Steelers as well. TJ Watt. This was another weird thing. He tore his pectoral muscle mid-game. He knew it. You saw the lip reading where he said he did. Initial reports where he's going to be out for season. Wanted to seek a second opinion. Then they said it was going to be like 8 to 12 weeks. And now it says expected to miss at least 6 weeks with a partially torn pectoral muscle. At least, obviously, is probably like the best case scenario is he's back for like week 7. But that doesn't seem likely with the pectoral muscle.
Just imagine like he's a force to be reckoned with, and now you have a torn something dealing with. He could even tear that further if he tries to come back too soon. So the smart thing would be to just call it a season and just get that repaired. But again, I don't know how much it's torn, but it's torn enough to cause problems. So, you know, this is the same thing that happened to Danielle Hunter, and he couldn't even play the rest of the season. So the Steelers would be smart to just bench him for like at least until the playoffs. But let's see, 6 weeks. I think it's a little too optimistic. I think it's going to be longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he needs to have surgery or needs to do whatever needs to get done to fix that, which if it's partially torn, are you just like literally waiting for it to heal?
Exactly. That's what they're doing. And as like the best player in football, you know, arguably, you don't want that to linger around and potentially tear more in the future. So I don't know what they're doing. They should just openly just do surgery and call it a season.
Yeah, again, he's like a franchise changing player. So and he's still super young. You don't want this to be something that derails his career. Let's jump into the rundown show. Thursday Night Football kicked off in a big way with the Bills traveling to LA to take on the Rams, reigning Super Bowl champs. Bills came in here 2.5-point favorites and covered that with ease. 31-10 final score. Under 53 comes in. I mean, this game was literally Bills and all Bills. We talked about it last episode, and I know it's maybe a cliche. I saw on Twitter a lot of people saying it's a really, really lazy take to claim that a Super Bowl team has a Super Bowl hangover. But I think, you know, cliches are built behind the back of some truth, right? Like, there's a reason it's a cliche. There's a reason a lot of people say it because there's truth to it. And I mean, if it wasn't a Super Bowl hangover, if that's just the excuse, but like, you know, maybe Matthew Stafford's elbow was still hurt. Maybe Allen Robinson was still getting acquainted with the offense. Maybe Cam Akers wasn't fully healthy. That's why they had to deploy Darrell Henderson. Whatever the case may be, they looked like they were hungover on the field. I mean, this wasn't a competition. Bills ran away with this. Interesting things to note before I let you chime in. Darrell Henderson played 82% of the snaps for the Rams running back committee when, you know, Cam Akers was going second round in most mock drafts. I mean, that's absolutely asinine. I mean, hopefully it's just the fact that the Achilles is something that they want to slowly bring Cam Akers back from. But if it's not, I mean, Henderson honestly looked good in his touches. So there's no reason why Cam Akers comes in and just gets 100% of the carries, right? I think at best they split the carries because Darrell Henderson has done nothing to show that he doesn't deserve the ball. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what to make of that. I know there's Cam Akers drafters that are just immediately looking to deploy him via trade or look to see if somebody wants to take a chance on him. But that's really, really scary for a guy you drafted as, your RB2, potentially a low end RB1.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's a couple things you have to talk about before we move on. And number one is the Bills. Last year I called them the Super Bowl champions, right? Just a little year too early, but now they're looking like that firepower that I would kind of hope would happen last year. And the Rams, the last 7, I believe, Super Bowl champions have won the first game of the season. So, a lot of people just jump on that right away, but they forget that they're playing against the Bills team that has no weaknesses. And it was pretty obvious why the Rams lost, in my opinion. It's the offensive line. Like they just got murdered. They got killed. And again, Stafford is much like Kirk Cousins. You need time to throw. And if you have time to throw, you'll make perfect passes, but he didn't have time to throw. And he started kind of getting to him. And, this whole Rappaport with Robinson kind of got just forgotten because I guess, when you're under that much pressure and not expecting the game to go like that, he just kind of forgot about Robinson. He just went to his safety nets, just a lot of dump offs and a lot of Cooper Kupps. So that's great for Cooper Kupp owners, but Robinson owners are probably not going to start him next week. And I think that will be the week he kind of catches fire. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And Rams aren't going to go. They still have Sean McVay as the coach. So they're not going to be as bad as they played the first week. But they're also not going to be like the Bills and just demolish every opponent moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about it. The offensive line was awful. Bill sacked Stafford 7 times without sending a single blitz. I mean, that literally tells you everything you need to know. The offensive line was completely overpowered, overmatched. And I think the Bills just looked so damn hungry, right? I mean, yeah, the Super Bowl hangover might be real. And like you said, last 7 Super Bowl winners come back and win. But last 7 Super Bowl winners weren't coming back to face a team that expected to win the Super Bowl last year. And the game they played against Patrick Mahomes, like, that left something to be desired when you thought you had the game with like 13 seconds left. Oh, yeah. And they still come back. So, it's one of those things that they had to stew on all offseason. So you knew why they were going to come through and come out and play with some fire. So I'm expecting a lot of games for the Bills this season to go the way it did this week. And they're not going to face every opponent as tough as the Rams are presumed to be. So it's going to be a really, really exciting season for Buffalo fans. And you talked about it. Cooper Kupp obviously got a lot of the action. Shout out to a couple players. Gabe Davis had a nice day. A lot of people drafted him, expecting him to take the next step, and it looks like he could be that true number 2. Jamison Crowder came in, was a nice safety blanket on like third downs and situationally. So, just doing all reliable Jamison Crowder things. Josh Allen, I know people drafted him as like the number 1 quarterback, and some people drafted him early, but I mean, he put up a really, really nice fantasy day. So you're not really that upset with that. And then you hit on Allen Robinson, man. Allen Robinson was a guy that everybody's expecting. New offense, Sean McVay, like he's finally got a quarterback. But when the quarterback doesn't have time to throw, he's not going to have enough time to build that rapport with the new guy. Like you said, he hit a safety blanket, Cooper Kupp, who didn't miss a beat from last year, right? Had the same type of stats and game that he does last year. But the scoreboard shows that they lost by 3 touchdowns. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know is Cooper Kupp or bust for them. So 31-10, Bills take that game. Nice to see from the Bills. I expect the Rams to bounce back here in week 2.
Next game up, Saints at Falcons. My eyes were glued to this TV, and this was the TV farthest away from where I was sitting. So I was very upset running around all over Buffalo Wild Wings. Atlanta just, they showed up. I was really complaining about their pass rush, and that pass rush was very much, alive for a good part of the game, where enough to clog the middle, where Alvin Kamara had nowhere to go, and Alvin Kamara ended up having a rib injury, which explained why Ingram was in there so much, why they just played, a bunch of wide receivers on the field and didn't really establish any run. It made a lot of sense after I understood that he got hurt. But Taysom Hill, man, I hate him. Everybody I know dislikes him. It's just that he comes in, and this is the type of day you'll get from Taysom Hill. And if you start banking on this to happen, that's when you'll lose, right? You can't expect stuff like this from Taysom Hill all the time. First game of the season, people probably thought they moved on from Taysom Hill because his big daddy's not there anymore, who loves him so much, but they kept using him. And I think if they use him like this, surprisingly 4 times a game, it could work out. But if you start trying to think Hill's going to get 10 touches a game, he's not going to produce this way. So just keep that in mind. Ingram, a nice stash, never really going to do anything besides some vulturing at the goal line. So I wouldn't really look too much into it. And I'm not really too upset at Kamara. I think it's just going to be a bounce back game. First game of the season, there's always weird shit happening, and that just happened to be one of the weird things. Landry and Thomas, those two guys, man, old men that just kind of, they didn't do anything flashy. They didn't juke anybody out. They didn't run past anybody. They just made contested catches. And I think that's what they're supposed to do, right? You have Chris Olave and Kamara doing all the other fast people stuff. And then you have Landry and Thomas just securing catches. What more do you want, right? These are potential, like these names will live on forever. Jarvis Landry, it's like he's kind of a, third stringer in our eyes at this point, but he's probably one of the best receivers of our time as far as like possession goes. And Michael Thomas, really didn't, touchdowns really saved him. He didn't really do much outside of the end zone, but in the end zone, he's always been a threat, and looks like they're going to go to him more and more. I think Cordero Patterson, man, if you drafted him like myself, I was panicking. I was contemplating Mike Davis for Patterson the day of the game. And I just had to close my eyes and just hope it's one of those situations where you drafted the player. It's week 1. I was like, you know what, just screw it. I'll be way more upset if I start Davis and he gets 1 point than if I start Patterson if he gets 2 points. So Patterson just kind of ended up working out. That looks like there is no really competition for Patterson until at least Damian Williams comes back. But who the hell is Damian Williams, right? Is that somebody you fear? Probably not. So it's like having Derrick Henry 2.0, in my opinion, and he's faster than Derrick Henry. He's not as smart of a route, runner, but he's got the power, he's got the size, he's got, enough time in that backfield to kind of understand the whole playbook. He's a veteran presence all of a sudden, and I don't think the Falcons are going to shy away from giving him the ball. So that's great. If you have Patterson, I suspect you'll either start him in the flex or RB2 moving forward. And Drake London, I talked about his injuries, how big men can't really do much after having knee injuries, but he's young. He's super young, and young people can handle knee injuries, even if they're big. So good debut. They basically shut down Kyle Pitts the whole game. I think that was the Saints' focus, and it worked out for them. And they just let Drake London have 74 yards and 5 catches, which, as a good defense, kind of like the Legion of Boom. Legion of Boom always let people have 5 catches and 74 touchdowns. They just didn't allow any touchdowns. So I think that's kind of what the philosophy the Saints were going with. And it worked out for, sporadically throughout the game. You kind of thought the Saints are going to win or lose this game at one point. But Falcons did Falcons things. And when you have a, good offensive mind, just a solid team. Let's call the Saints a solid team on both ends of the football. When you have a team like that, there's always a chance to come back against the Falcons. So this game ended up, working out for Saints fans. But they need to polish up on a few things if they want to win against really good teams.
Yeah, let's kick it over to the monsoon game, the 49ers at the Bears. This is one of those games, week 1. The weather was so freaking awful that it's really hard to take a lot away from it. Like, are we gonna take away from it the fact that Trey Lance and Justin Fields played awfully? No, I mean, literally, you're watching the game. And I don't understand how a game is being played on that field. Like they were having to scoop the water out of the field. Like it was so ridiculous. So there's really not a lot to take away. We talked about it earlier. Elijah Mitchell got hurt. He's going to be out for an extended period of time. So Justin Wilson led the backfield after he got hurt. Justin Wilson's pretty much the only guy in the backfield outside of obviously Deebo Samuel, but he's a receiver.
Jeff Wilson, right?
Sorry, Jeff Wilson. Yeah, Jeff Wilson. So definitely somebody to keep an eye out for and probably try to pick up in the first week of waiver. If you're thin on running backs, he's definitely somebody that you probably want to take a chance on because there's a good chance he starts 6 to 7 to 8 games. I mean, depending on how severe Elijah Mitchell's injury is. And he's been around the block. So he's been with the 49ers for some years now that even if they pick up somebody just for depth position and pieces, it seems like Jeff Wilson's going to be the guy that they're going to lean on. So Jeff Wilson's going to be important for them. And again, like I mentioned, David Montgomery did have 17 carries, 3 catches. So the volume was there. But again, the game script, everything about this game just made me feel like I can toss this game out the window because there's really not a lot to take away from it.
Yeah, I agree. I would temper all expectations from everybody in this game, but I do see a rise of Khalil Herbert situation going on. He got a goal line carry, but Montgomery did get hit pretty hard a couple of plays before that. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Because if you think about it, if you're going to use Montgomery in any situation, it's goal line situation, right? So that was a little confusing for me. But, again, like you said, there's nothing really to take away from this game. I wouldn't really bank on gaining any fantasy knowledge from this game. People that don't even turn the ball over, like Deebo, lost the ball. I mean, it's raining crazy hard and he's getting hit. It's unpredictable. Do not just throw this game out the window and be happy with the outcome if you ended up getting good outcome from your players.
Yeah, again, Bears take this one at home, big 7-point dogs, kind of win the game outright under 41, 19-10 final. So big win for the Bears, who I had pegged as like bottom 5 teams in the league. Again, I know it's a monsoon game, so we'll see if they can actually build upon this, but 1-0 for the Bears is something that I don't think any Bears fans even expected. So
next game up, we have Steelers at Bengals. Pittsburgh was 6.5 underdogs, and the under hit at 44, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So, again, like, it's just not fair, man. Like, Steelers, there's something about the Steelers that things just always go right, especially in the regular season when things don't really matter. Things are going right quite often. There's so many times in this game, you would just think the Steelers offense is like an NCAA team. I'm like, what are you doing? So many times they weren't able to run the ball. They weren't even able to throw the ball very well. But, after a while, the Steelers defense just found ways to create turnovers. They even scored off of turnovers. Nobody wanted to win this game, but the Steelers defense really looked elite here. And it is against Joe Burrow. So, that whole offense that just demolished everybody in the playoffs last year kind of looked really bad. Joe Burrow was able to save himself with those touchdowns later in the game, but he threw 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles, lost one of those fumbles, and got sacked 7 times. He got abused. Kind of safe to say he got exploited, kind of got figured out a little bit, I think. And, losing T. Higgins has a lot to do with that. That's his, Chase makes those deep plays, but Higgins is really technically like the best receiver as far as possession goes on this team. Tyler Boyd kind of screwed up a few things. He kind of cut his slant route. I think it was an out route short, which led to the pick 6. And, the kicking problems left and right, it happened all over the NFL, but this game was special.
For McPherson of all people, after like how amazing, it like literally reminded me of Blair Walsh, where like the year before Blair Walsh was a god. Yeah. And then the year after, all of a sudden he looks like trash. I know it's 1 week, but it was so unlike McPherson.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just shocked. But not just that, and to highlight some injuries that you already mentioned, Najee Harris got hurt. Foot injury for big guys is a little scary. I don't know what to make of that just yet. NFL players always say they want to play. Like J.K. Dobbins all postseason was like, he was making fun of like Ian Rappaport for saying that he would not play week 1, which was called like a month earlier. And he just got butthurt. It's these players. You have to remember, these are boys. These are little kids that just want to play. We forget that because we're so old now. But they just want to play, and you can't trust them. You cannot trust the players and what they say. You're going to have to look at the reports that come out. But Najee got hurt. Watt got hurt. They still pulled off the win. Must be nice. And Deontay and Freiermuth looking like the reliable targets here. Freiermuth got targeted a few times in the end zone as well. Claypool, I really don't know what he does now except for run reverse routes, reverse handoffs. Yeah. But again, it's the first game of the season. Let's see what they have figured out from this game. I myself dropped Claypool to pick up Mike Davis. So, I'm not too sad.
I'm not too happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the potential is always there with Claypool, but I don't know. Maybe he's not who I thought he was this whole time.
Yeah, I totally echo that sentiment. I feel like he showed early on some flashes of like being the next, Steeler wide receiver great, but it's just not consistent. And there's got to be a reason a team that's coached by somebody as smart and respected as Mike Tomlin, like he knows when Antonio Brown was there and how good he was. He's like, he's catching 5 passes every single game. So he had that like longest streak ever, 5 catches, 50 yards, right? And so like he knows how to utilize amazing receivers and like talented players when he has them. So there's a reason Claypool still isn't getting the like ball like he should. And we see him make these flashy plays every once in a while. There's got to be like a lack of consistency, effort, whatever in practice that maybe we don't see. But and then one thing to note, I know George Pickens was kind of the talk of the town. I think he had like 3 targets, 1 catch or something like that. So I know it's week 1. It's going to take a rookie a little bit of time. But nonetheless, I don't know if that was his exact stat line, by the way. I totally kind of pulled that out of my ass. But
that sounds pretty accurate. I think he even had a red zone target at one point. I don't remember, but I might just be thinking of preseason highlights at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's all we can kind of, he had 1 catch for 3 yards on 3 targets, right? So I mean, take it for what it is. But again, it's 1 week, so don't write these players off. For the Steelers, it just feels like they won a game they should have lost. So it's so important that your first week of the season, you like steal a victory, right? I mean, there were so many opportunities where neither team looked like they wanted to win this game, and the Steelers end up pulling it out after like 75 different chances or second chances in overtime. So 23-20 final there. Eagles at Lions was the next game. And man, this looked like this was literally a prototypical Lions performance even from last year. Lions come out early, they take the lead, and you're like, oh shit, new year, Dan Campbell, Hard Knocks, this is the year. Eagles end up like putting up like 3 straight touchdowns after that, right? So you're like, oh no, the Lions are falling back to earth. The Lions are screwed. It's the same Lions of old. And then just when you think the game's over, the Lions start clawing their way back, end up making this a 3-point game. It was literally like scripted to perfection of what the Lions did last year, like every single game. So it's unfortunate that this wasn't the game that they actually came out victorious. Like, I think that's turning the page, right? All of these really close games against these good teams, hard fought, whatever, like win one of these. And I think that's going to turn that page finally and open the door for like the possibilities for the Detroit Lions. But 38-35, it was a shootout. Detroit did cover the 4-point dog spread. Over 48.5 got absolutely obliterated. Things to highlight. I mean, Eagles continue to just deploy that running. 4 different players with rushing touchdowns. So it's almost like once you get a touchdown, you're just going to sit. We're going to give the other guy a chance. So it's like super fearful when you have like a running back like Miles Sanders or something. It's like, okay. But I guess the one nice thing is maybe they'll wait to bench him till he gets a touchdown. It's like, okay, now you have a touchdown. Let's give the other guy a chance. So it's literally what they did. Sanders got a touchdown, bench. Gainwell got a touchdown, bench. Scott got a touchdown, bench. Jalen Hurts ran one in, so it was like literally rushing touchdowns left and right. Jalen Hurts, again, another year so far, week 1, it looks like he's going to put similar fantasy points up to last year. Ran the ball really, really effectively. Throwing was just kind of where it needed to be. And it was really nice to have A.J. Brown. 10 catches, 155 yards, 13 targets. I mean, just think about that for a second. 10 for 155 on 13 targets. Their number 1 receiver last year was Devontae Smith, which, again, Devontae Smith is a great receiver. I think he only saw 3 targets this game. So, like, just how big that entirety of that offense has shifted now. He got 3 targets. I think Goddard was the next guy that got the most targets on the team after Brown. So, again, there's a huge shift in target share where Devontae Smith can now be the second receiver and maybe be one of the best second receivers in the NFL. So, good for the Eagles on that side. On the Lions side, you talked about him all offseason, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is a monster. 15 rushes, 144 yards, 1 touchdown. Swift also had 3 catches. Jamal Williams got 11 carries, so it was almost like a split. But, man, he was way less efficient. 28 yards, no touchdowns, only 1 catch. The one big kind of highlight for the receiving core for the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we've been talking about, 12 targets, 8 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. So half-point, full-point PPR, that dude seems like a must-start.
Yeah, I agree. Everything kind of just played out exactly how I thought this would. This was like predict this game to the max. It just kind of happened. Eagles run the ball. Hurts scores rushing touchdown. A.J. Brown gets catches. Swift is still a monster. Williams change of pace back. Amon-Ra St. Brown's their best receiver. Just played it out to the T. So, I'm happy for the Lions. They showed some fight, but, Lions going Lions. Next up, we got the Patriots at Dolphins. I watched a lot of this game. It was probably the third most percentage of my eyes went to this game, mainly because I was with my coworker who's a Dolphins fan. And, and he found out I actually have the Dolphins and the Chargers in the AFC Championship game this year.
Dude, how hyped was he?
He's very hyped. He's extremely hyped, especially because they're Tua's still looking like Tua. They could have probably won this game like 40-7 if the quarterback play was a little bit better. Hill was targeted predominantly. They just kept going to him. His stat line wasn't that impressive. It was 8 for 94, but it just seemed like every time he threw the ball, he's going to Hill. Every time he threw the ball, he's going to Hill. So, when you have Hill over there and then Waddle just kind of playing like it's a clear-cut second wide receiver role and maximizing on those opportunities, this is going to be a pretty lethal combo. They're just both really fast and they're both open like all the time.
They're like very similar players, like very, very similar.
They really are. And it's just like, it's impossible to just watch both of them on the field. And then you have Chase Edmonds coming out of the back and, catching shitload of passes and just rushing. He didn't rush that well because he didn't really get the opportunities to, but he's maximizing on his catches. And those catches aren't going anywhere. It's Tua. Come on, he's going to throw it to Edmonds.
He's going to dump it off.
Yeah, and that problem you were wondering if Edmonds is startable or whatnot. I think that's out the window now. I think
he's absolutely startable.
I think flex is definitely home for Edmonds, and it could even go up to wide running back too. Those 3 look like possible must starts every game, depending on your roster. But yeah, we pretty much saw what we're going to see from the Dolphins. I predict this type of game. Defense is pretty good, especially when they play against the Patriots and the Jets twice a year. They're not going to be able to keep up with the Bills. So I don't know why I have the Dolphins going to the AFC Championship game, but just hoping the Bills kind of fall apart there. But yeah, it was awesome. I'm happy for Mike McDaniels. It was very much exactly how the blueprint. Another game where I predicted it literally just to be exactly like this. Patriots wide receivers are obsolete still. They tried doing some Devontae Parker stuff.
Yeah, like one catch or one target or something is ridiculous.
Yeah, it just there's nothing changed. Nothing changed with the Patriots. Same philosophy. Maybe Bill Belichick is really not who we thought it was. I don't know, but it's not looking good.
It was definitely a smokescreen. All that talk about Mac Jones looking amazing and all this crap. Like they're offense. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody saw that coming. He's got a pretty damn low ceiling. I just think he's got a pretty decent floor. I think that's what makes him intriguing. But yeah, I mean, their offense literally couldn't get anything going. The running game wasn't great. I mean, Harris and Stevenson basically split carries. Neither one ran particularly well. So, I mean, again, it makes sense why Miami covered their 3-point spread and won the game 20-7.
Just remember, if the Patriots do have a favorable matchup, then those running backs could be playable because they love 100%. Running the ball. They love running the ball. I mean, Harris had 9 carries for 48 yards in a game where the game script was totally against him the whole time. So I could see a game where, 120 yards against a pretty shitty team. And they do get to play the Jets, who still look pretty shitty. So
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think if they get into a situation where the game favors them, like the script, like you said, and they can just do what they did last year, where like Harris was running the ball 25 times, Stevenson like 14 times, and they just control the clock. Yeah, that can be great fantasy days. But as of now, I mean, those guys, we talk about in fantasy having an RB1 and just making sure you have the starter. Like right now, those guys seem like very, very matchup oriented starts. Like neither of them are must starts. That takes us to the Ravens. Baltimore traveled to New York to take on the Jets, favored by 7. They covered that with ease. 24-9 was the final score. Under 44.5 cashed in. Weird game. I mean, again, it was one of those games where it really felt like the first week of the season because the Ravens had plenty of opportunities to kind of pull away from this, but they didn't. Like Lamar, weird, only ran the ball 6 times for 17 yards, which I have to believe. If I went back and looked at his game log, 17 yards rushing for Lamar has to be like top 3 lowest he's had in like the last 2 years, right? I mean, that seemed incredibly low. And I think what was weird was Kenyon Drake led the backfield. So I was super pissed off about that. I made a last second stupid ass start and started Mike Davis. And I think he had like 0.1 points for like 3 quarters. So it was like straight up depression mode activated for me, but it is what it is. You live and you learn there. But for the Ravens, we talked about the wide receiver 1, trying to search for that. Bateman, 5 targets. Andrews, 7 targets. Duvernay, 4 targets, but he had 2 touchdowns. So it seems like, unless Bateman demands like 10 targets a game, which we know Andrews is going to get, it seems like it's going to be another year where like Lamar just kind of spreads the ball.
I mean, I don't even know if Andrews is going to get that. The first half, I was just ripping my hair out because they kept going too likely and he kept dropping them. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He's wide open. Okay, congratulations, you're fast for a tight end. He's getting open, but he just did not look like he knew what he was doing. He was going in weird directions. He dropped a few of them. And I'm like, Andrews could easily be having 100 yards already right now at halftime if those were thrown to Andrews. And he also had one of those in the back of the front of the right side of the end zone, like a very deep pass. We had to dive for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just some tuning up to be done here, but I think the Ravens are going to be Ravens in no time.
Yeah,
and don't forget, it was also raining in that game, just not as bad as the other game, but there was a significant amount of rain.
We talk about the Ravens side. Jets, I know they started Flacco, so Flacco's not built long term, but thing to watch out for the Jets was their running back committee. Everybody was hyped on the Breece Hall train. Breece Hall only had 6 carries. Michael Carter had 10. Michael Carter had 7 catches, and Breece Hall had 6. So, I mean, if we're looking at a world where catches like that for both of them are going to be somewhat sustainable, or that's going to kind of be the game script, then there is a world where both of those guys can possibly be like a flex starter, even maybe an RB2 in like PPR formats. But 7 catches and 6 catches. I know it's Flacco. Maybe Wilson will air it out a little bit more, but the receivers were basically not important, not relevant really, because the target share was so spread out. So it kind of seems like it's the running backs or bust right now for them, but that is obviously because Joe Flacco's the quarterback and who knows what it's going to be when Zach Wilson gets back.
Yeah. Joe Flacco was dying back there and I don't know if he can sustain that any longer. But Michael Carter. Michael Carter.
He looks good.
He looked really good. He looked like a pure RB1. I was like, oh my God, he's phenomenal. And it just sucks that Breece Hall come into the picture at this point of Carter's career.
Maybe that's why. Maybe they drafted Breece Hall and Michael Carter's like, really, guys? Like, I had a pretty good year last year, and you're going to take a running back? And so he's like, you know what? I'm on a revenge tour.
Yeah, he looked really good.
He did. He looked good. It jumped out at me too. Just some of the cuts and how agile he was being, and like shifty, which I don't know. Last year it seemed like he was shifty but not agile, if that makes sense. So I don't know. He showed a little bit more. I was very impressed. It did seem like he kind of had like whatever that, what's pip in your step or whatever the hell that's called, something in his step. But good for him. Ravens end up winning that 24-9.
Speaking of really quick and agile players, Jaguars at Commanders was a game where, it was a little interesting at times. I was watching Travis Etienne pretty closely, not really impressed. He didn't get as much play time as Robinson did. Actually, I think they split evenly, right? I think it was an even split.
In terms of being on the field, yeah, I think it was even, or like maybe Etienne had a little bit of catches to make up for the lack of rushes, but I think like time on the field was fairly similar for both.
Yeah, it was pretty even, and just Robinson got those goal line carries where, that's touchdowns are king. And when it comes to fantasy, it's just 6 points automatically. He had a pretty good day, 11 rushes for 66 yards and a touchdown. Etienne, just kind of playing the Swiss Army roll knife at this point, which isn't too shocking, especially because of how well Robinson was performing on the field. Sounds like a situation I want to stay the fuck away from for the rest of the year, at least for next week. Let's not get too carried away. Again, no player comes back from Achilles and just takes it away. It just doesn't happen, but we got to remember Robinson's pretty young. These things always apply to like veteran players or like, players that have been playing for a while, but Robinson's like his third year, fourth year, I forget. Still fairly young. So we'll see how long he can handle it, but I don't think the Jags are going to just force him down people's throats. They're pretty smart. I see a lot of splitting happening in the near future, and let's just see if Etienne can maximize off of those, which I think will happen. I think he will. He is technically the shiftiest player of all time. He has the highest. What's the rating? The player, like Jonathan Taylor's the only player that has the same amount of. It's like the combine
elusiveness.
Stuff.
I don't know.
No, it's. What I'm talking about? Calvin Johnson had it really high. Jerick McKinnon was really high.
Yeah, whatever, the raw athletics score or whatever, RAS or something like that. Yeah.
So Etienne has the highest one of all time. So, the ability's there. Let's see how they use them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you brought up a good point in the sense that like Robinson, when he played, was good. And then he got hurt like for a while, right? Now he's back.
Yeah.
And so they have like, when they don't have amazing weapons on the outside, there's a world where they should be using both of those running backs on the field at the same time, where like Etienne's lining up like in the slot, Robinson's in the back or whatever. And like, they can make the offense so much more dynamic that way. I give Doug Peterson kind of the benefit of the doubt in the sense that maybe he's going to see that because he sees like two of his three best weapons, maybe outside of Christian Kirk, are in the backfield. So it makes no sense to have one of them off the field and one of them on the field at different times. So I'm really hoping there's a world where both of those guys can get utilized, kind of like how the Packers do with like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, kind of that stuff.
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this earlier Sunday when I was watching these games. I was looking at all these teams, and there's two different philosophies. There's teams that just air it out to their receivers all the time, ignore their running backs, dump offs here and there, right? And then there's the teams that predominantly use their running backs and sporadically throw their wide receivers. Almost every single team that does their running backs over the wide receivers will either lose in the playoffs or never win a Super Bowl. Like that's the world we live in now, where you have to throw it deep and you have to throw it to your receivers. So from fantasy perspective, it's good to attack those teams or have the players from those teams that throw predominantly use their running backs, like the Lions or like the Packers or now like them and like the Chubbs and the Hunts. From a fantasy perspective, we like that, but really, really good teams, they don't prioritize the running backs as much as they prioritize the wide receivers.
What else did you have on this game?
Yeah, so Christian Kirk, I gave some advice to one of my friends. It was like around 7 or 8. Christian Kirk was hanging around. He's like, do I take Christian Kirk or do I take I don't know. It was like some really, really good tight end. I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Hawkinson or something. And I was like, you go Kirk. It's like, number one receiver. He's never had opportunity like this. And what do you know? He has like the most targets he's ever gotten in his life in the first game. And I think, being a team that's probably going to be behind a lot, and Christian Kirk can separate, he's got ways to separate from the defense. He's not as good, but he can create open space catches. And I think that's all you really need. Volume is king, and 12 targets. I just see this being like 12 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 14 targets. Like there's going to be a lot of targets for Christian Kirk. And then Gibson, right? Like I wish we could just skip over this. I'm just so butthurt. It's just like talking about players that you draft knowing their potential, and then they suck for you, or they fumble too much, or they get hurt, and then they come out here for people that get great value at wherever he got drafted, and does pretty well. He didn't run the ball really well per se, but volume is king. He made really the most of everything. 7 catches for 72 yards. Come on now. Like, come on.
Led the Commanders in receiving.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there? What about all these? Stay away from, like what's his name?
McKissick. Yeah.
McKissick. What happened to McKissick? It was a freaking Gibson show, and that's because he just kind of he took hits after hits, and he fell forward, and he just kind of like, for some reason, like Ron Rivera really loves this guy. He's trying to support him. I don't know what that feels like, because like, looking at the Bill Belichick world and everything, it's just like screw up once you're benched. So maybe this is like the new age of the NFL, where you forgive and just hugs and kisses and stuff like that. But it's working.
Just say
out for
hi
Gibson.
to people in the locker room and shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's working out for Gibson. We'll see how long that lasts. Maybe till week 5. And then Terry McLaurin salvaged off of that touchdown, but he's spreading the ball, man. Carson Wentz spreading the ball. This is probably the best scenario he's ever been as far as the amount of athletic players around him, and not Debo, but Curtis Samuel out here getting targets and getting rushes. He did pretty well on both of those aspects of the game. He had 11 targets, probably the most he's had since he played for Carolina, if he's even had that much with them.
Right.
So, but I'm also not, jumping on the bandwagon just yet. It's still a Carson Wentz-led team. They may be behind. They're not playing the Jaguars every game, So this is going to be one of those situations where you kind of sit and just watch. Put them on your little waiver watch list. Don't waste any like high-end picks on this, because, there's just not enough evidence to show that these type of players come out and just have the time of their lives. And then this player you do need to watch, Dotson. Jahan Dotson, great player in college, kind of slept on when you talk about these other bigger, faster receivers, but he caught 2 touchdown passes as a rookie, first game of the year. Only 3 targets, but he made him count, and he played a big role in their victory. So, just watch out, because if he's getting those looks in the end zone, any player is valuable when you get multiple looks in the end zone.
And the one thing I always say, especially with the red zone and end zone, is the players that get the touchdowns are players that can run good routes and create separation, find zones. Like we talk about, why does Adam Thielen catch so many touchdowns?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. Because he's amazing at running routes. He's amazing at finding holes in the zone when they're running a zone in the end zone. And Jahan Dotson is an amazing route runner. So, I mean, I don't know if he's grasped like the finding the zone aspect, but I know he's going to get open because of his route running. So, I don't know. Again, you talked about Terry McLaurin salvaging his game with just like 1 deep touchdown, but as talented as he is, like he's still just not consistently producing. I mean, as a guy that probably people drafted as wide receiver 2 to have 2 catches, like that's pretty shitty. So
why did they not go to him more? Like it makes you wonder.
I don't know.
It makes you wonder.
You're right. But anyways, Commanders take that win 28-22 at home. They covered the 3-point spread. Good for them. Over cashes if you took the over 44. So next game on the board, Browns traveled to Carolina to take on the Panthers. This was Baker Mayfield's revenge game, but he was playing it at home. Cleveland came in as 2.5-point dogs on the road in Carolina, over under 41.5. Browns win this in a very, very close game, 26-24 final. They cover the spread, win the game outright, over cashes. I think for the Browns, same story, different year. Just kind of rinse and repeat their quarterback at this point. It doesn't matter who plays quarterback. All you have to do is give the ball to Chubb 22 times. He'll get you 141 yards. And then you give the ball to Hunt half of those times, 11 times, 46 yards. He'll get one in the end zone for you. Oh, and Hunt will also catch random passes, 4 for 24 and a touchdown. So literally, if you drafted Kareem Hunt because you were desperate, you had an amazing week because you probably stacked up on receivers early. You took Kareem Hunt because he catches passes. And wouldn't you know it, he has an amazing game 1, as does Chubb. It seems like it's another year where both of those guys can be starters in fantasy on a week-to-week basis for different reasons, obviously. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones led the receiving corps with 11 targets. Amari Cooper only had 6. Jacoby Brissett just kind of did his thing, just kept him in the game. And then we talk about the Panthers, right? This is the least amount of work I've ever seen CMC get. I mean, his usage was just really, really down with Baker. He had 10 rushes, 33 yards, did end up getting in the end zone, 4 catches, 24 yards. So like for a game where he played and he was healthy the entire game, this has to be one of his like lowest outputs in terms of production that we've seen from him. So definitely something to monitor. Like just watching this game, every time in the past, any drop back, it seemed like they were immediately looking at CMC, right? But Baker was not doing that. Baker was trying to get the ball downfield. He loved Robbie Anderson. That's why he hit him with that bomb. DJ Moore didn't get as involved, but it seemed like Baker is not trying to dump off. And that's kind of what CMC does. He catches the ball on a dump off and he catches a shit ton of them. So that's definitely something to monitor for some players that drafted him number 1 overall, some players that had him 2nd or 3rd. I mean, regardless, you're taking him top 3. And so definitely something to monitor. That's not the usage you want from a guy who, should be like number 1 in fantasy. I talked about Robbie Anderson, 8 targets. DJ Moore had 6. Robbie Anderson had the better production day, but again, I think that expected to level out as the season progresses. And we talked about Baker, man, 1 interception, 4 sacks. The dude had 4 fumbles. He got so lucky that he lost none of them, but 4 fumbles. I mean, that kind of shows how sloppy that game was for him. And I know it's his first game. I know, again, it's the Browns, the team that kind of traded him away and didn't want him. So maybe there's emotions involved and whatnot, but Carolina had a really good chance to win this game at home and they just quite didn't get it done. So I'm a little disappointed from them. The Browns win to show, but it's weird because, even when they had Baker, I wasn't super excited about the Browns, but they were a little bit more exciting. But they are just so damn boring when, they have Jacoby Brissett and their best receiver is Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's the epitome of a boring-ass team. They won the game. Yeah. The running backs are amazing, but everything outside the running backs are pretty freaking boring.
Yeah, top 2 boringest teams. Go.
Browns and Texans?
Browns and Patriots. Browns and Patriots, but by far the boringest teams in the league. Yeah. Okay, next up, we have Colts and the Texans. Wow, what a weird-ass game, right? What a weird-ass game. Ended up in a tie. Jonathan Taylor kind of looked like, whoa, what is going on? Why are we not getting points? What's going on? He had 8 points for 2 quarters, and it wasn't the first quarter. He had 4 or 5 points in the first quarter. Second quarter went up to 8. Third quarter stayed around 8. And then, boom, all of a sudden, bam, 26, 25, I forget the actual number in half-point PPR. But, that's what Jonathan Taylor does. All he needs is a couple of plays. And, he's young, he's fast, he's strong. He's going to get you your points. Nothing to worry about there. Matt Ryan, 1 interception, 4 fumbles, and just lost 1 of them, which played a big role in how this game ended up in a tie. A lot of potential for the Colts. All they were doing was playing the Texans. All you're doing is playing the Texans. Run the ball. Find open receivers, you win the game. They just couldn't do it. They found Pittman, 9 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Great pick for the people that drafted Pittman on 13 targets. That's crazy. That's crazy.
If he plays that way, he's literally pushed himself into now the top echelon of receivers and a true number 1 receiver. Yeah,
we're talking Julio Jones numbers. 13 targets, that's double the next guy's amount of targets, right? So we're talking, just start and forget. Start him and forget him. Just leave him in your lineup always. David Mills, man, still looking like the best quarterback of that draft. He just plays really well football. He knows how to play football. And as I was warning every single person that drafted Pierce, I was like, there's a guy named Rex Burkhead who's probably one of the better 3rd down running backs in the league. Well, you know what? He came in here and got 14 carries and caught 5 catches, while Pierce only had 11 carries and 1 catch. Pierce has never been known to catch passes. Pierce has never been known to be a volume running back. In college, he only had just over 100-something touches every single year. That's a gadget player. We're talking a 3rd down specialist. Why are people drafting him in the 2nd round thinking you're going to get Derrick Henry numbers? Come on, man. You got to temper your expectations. You cannot fall into this hype and just start doing things because everybody else is doing it.
Especially when it's preseason hype. Preseason is the most things that don't matter. More so than whose line is it anyways points. Their shit literally does not matter.
Preseason points do not matter. Yeah. So, I'm sure there's better days to come, but it was the Colts defense, top 5. It's hard to beat that. But I'm sure he's got a lot of learning curves to get past, and hopefully this was one of them. And then, the old reliable soldier that sits in the back of the class and just gets hundreds. Brandon Cooks, 12 targets, 7 catches for 82 yards. Nothing flashy, but I know you didn't spend a lot of money to get him on your team.
I would have taken catches. That.
Yeah, exactly. I would have taken it. A lot of my players didn't do shit. So, and then OJ Howard catching 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. I guarantee you this will never happen again. This will never happen. This is literally
every single season. There's one guy that does this in the first week where it's 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns. And it's people are just running rampant for him. And then he'll catch no touchdowns the rest of the season.
And then people in week 8 will be like, yeah, man, I've been starting OJ Howard every day. And I'm like, come on. And then they'll be like, well, you got 2 touchdowns in the first game. I'm like, you have never won a fantasy championship.
Yeah. He caught 0 touchdowns the rest of the season, bro. So.
Yeah. Very likely. Very likely.
I'm happy for him though. He literally found work a week before, and he ended up getting scoring 2 touchdowns. So good for him. Yeah,
he leads all tight ends in touchdowns.
Yeah, exactly. He might lead all the NFL receivers in touchdowns too, maybe.
Yeah, he does. Tied. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson.
That's a good segue. Packers at Vikings was the next game on the board. Man, this was a freaking awesome game. If you're a Vikings fan. which we are. Vikings covered the 1.5-point spread. They were dogs, won the game outright, 23-7 final, under 48 cash. I mean, this game was everything we as Vikings fans could have hoped for in week one, right? Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson all day long. He was literally everywhere. Kirk Cousins, like, literally did not make a single mistake this game. He was getting time. He stepped up in the pocket. He moved around a little bit, threw perfect dots. Dalvin finally getting used the way we were hoping. Compliment, not focal point, right? Yeah. Let the running back be your complement to a pass-heavy offense, and that's literally exactly what they did with Dalvin Cook. Yep. Phenomenal. Defense, I don't even understand how they played so well, but props to the defense. 4 sacks, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovered, and holding Aaron Rodgers. I don't care that he has no receivers. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to just 7 points is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, who knows how the game would have gone if Christian Watson catches that deep pass and they score right away.
Yeah, that's that shit that keeps me up at night. It's like, what if, like the whole trajectory of the game would be different. The whole frustration from Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be there. So it's like, fuck, we still got to capitalize on those things. We got to be better.
Yeah, but the good thing is, again, in the past, we'd go up and then we'd take our foot off the gas. We'd let the team right back in it. Yep. And here, we kept our foot on the gas, and our defense didn't just surrender. They didn't just give in when it's like, okay, we've stopped them 2 or 3 times. Like, I think it's okay if we let them score now. Like, it's acceptable. No, dude, I think this team was just completely built different. KOC, all the new regime. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal and exciting to see. Packers side, obviously, Aaron Rodgers, not a great day. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon seem to have like a very, very big timeshare here. So not great for Jones owners based on where he's drafted. Amazing for Dillon owners based on where he's drafted, right? Aaron Jones, 5 rushes only for 49 yards, 3 catches, 27 yards. Dillon, 10 rushes, 45 yards, had the touchdown, so he got the goal line work, and he caught 5 catches for 46 yards. So the only other receiver or anybody of note for the Packers, Romeo Doubs at 4 for 37 on 5 targets.
Yeah, let's touch on Jones and Dillon real quick. Jones actually played more snaps than Dillon did. However, Rodgers was getting murdered back there, right? So, like, they needed more protection, and Dillon's obviously the bigger guy to protect. And anytime there was enough protection, the receivers were still not open, and then Dillon just caught all the dump-offs. So that is the explanation. If you were wondering, what the hell does this score sheet look like? Why does it look like this? Why is Jones not being used? It's a game script thing. They were down. They needed more blocking because Rodgers was getting murdered, and Dillon just happened to catch those and capitalize on a lot of those catches. That's why he had more receptions than Jones did, right? But I don't know if I would expect this to be this way. It's usually if the Packers are up, you would expect Dillon to have more touches, but especially when they're down by this much, this is kind of an anomaly. Let's see if the Packers offensive line has crumbled, because if it has crumbled, then Dillon's going to see a lot of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, exciting week 1 for the Vikings. As fans, it's not every day that we get to start the season 1-0, let alone beat the divisional team that is expected to win the division and wins the division just about every year. So all aboard the Vikings hype train.
Also of note, the battle between Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. Now Kirk Cousins has 5 wins. Aaron Rodgers has 4.
Kirk Cousins has beat Aaron Rodgers more times than Aaron Rodgers has beat Kirk Cousins. Let that sink in for a moment, guys. The Vikings train is officially here. Hopefully nobody else joins the bandwagon. If you try to, I'm going to kick your ass off. So go Vikes, 1-0, baby. Happy about it.
All right. Now we're going to talk about Saquon versus the Titans. The Giants versus the Titans. Giants, it's just another one of those games. It's just, Giants are Giants, and Giants play just like Giants. The only difference is the offensive line kind of held up a little bit, and Saquon was able to find some holes, and all Saquon needs is a little bit of space, and he is officially back. That was an extremely emphatic game. They trusted him in every scenario: 3rd down, 1st down, game-winning situations from the 2-yard line, everything Saquon got. This is going to be a steal in fantasy drafts. I was praying to get Swift than Saquon. Saquon than Swift. That was what I wanted in all of my drafts. That's why I wanted to trade down to 9, trade down to 10, trade down to 8, so I didn't have to deal with the possible, Devontae Adams sitting at 7. But, it happened. I'm not complaining about that too much, but Saquon and Swift would have been phenomenal. Saquon's going to be a league winner this year. I know it's a 1st-round, 2nd-round pick, but this man's going to kill it. He led the team in targets, just more reasons to love a running back. He's looking like CMC out there, man. It looked just like CMC. It's just, that's how he plays. So, happy for Saquon. Number 2, Tony. Man, I started you, bro. I started you.
Did you?
Yeah, I started him. It was between Mike Davis, Kadarius Toney, or Julio Jones, and I just didn't have it in me to start the old man.
No.
So I went with Toney on a possible losing game script for the Giants, but it was just head-to-head the whole time, and we're the leading receiver outside of Saquon was freaking Sterling Shepard because of a deep one bomb. So I'm not looking too much at this receiver situation, but I am sure as hell not starting Tony anytime soon until I see more of a consistent play from the receivers. Derrick Henry, he's slowly getting back up to his old habits. 21 carries for 82 yards is not something we're used to. And I think he only had one reception this game, which is pretty standard for Henry. He's not known to be a big catcher, but he had been catching more passes recently. Hilliard came in and just took them all. He was in every single passing down where the running back was even targeted or looked at or part of the actual play. Not sure what that's about. Maybe they're just trying to save Henry for later in the season, which is probably what they're doing.
Playing the long game like us.
Playing the long game. Not a dumb move. Definitely not a dumb move. So we'll see. I wouldn't be too worried. If you have Henry, you're obviously going to use him as your RB1 probably every game for the rest of the season, even if he has 0 points at times. Kyle Phillips is something we need to talk about. He led the way with 6 catches for 66 yards. That spells out 666, so it's a little scary, but there's a 9. There's a 9 targets. You get a 69. So it kind of evens it all out. But Kyle Phillips looking pretty good, right? What did you think about Kyle Phillips?
No, I thought that was really impressive. We were looking when they got rid of AJ Brown, they drafted Treylon Burks. So we're like, okay, well, what an awesome. It was like the Diggs and Jefferson, right? Oh my God, you lose one guy, you get one great guy. Like, and don't get me wrong, like Treylon Burks had a fine, 3 for 55 as kind of a rookie debut. But Kyle Phillips is also a rookie, and he's a rookie that none of us, not me, not you, not Shobit, not any podcast, not anybody that I watch talked about as a rookie coming out this past year. 5th round pick out of UCLA. He looked good. Like, it wasn't just that he was productive in his time. Like, he actually looked good on the field. He looked fast. He looked shifty. He was running good routes. He's making good catches. So 9 targets to lead the way. And I think the biggest thing about that is it's not like it was him and Robert Woods. It was Burks there. Woods was basically an afterthought with the 1 catch for 13 yards. And it was like predominantly Kyle Phillips. So I don't really know. It's 1 week. So let's not really jump to conclusions, but it is definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, the other guy, Treylon Burks, who's had the hype. Although, now I'm kind of regretting drafting him after watching Kyle Phillips just kind of like take over the offense. Again, week 1. But Treylon Burks really hasn't shown anything special. Let's be honest. Nope. It's just highlights from college is literally what he's banking on. He's got this asthma issue in the NFL. He's got this stamina issue. He's got, just not getting enough targets. I don't know what to make of it. I just don't see him becoming a superstar anytime soon.
That takes us to the Chiefs and the Cardinals. The Chiefs are traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals in a game that, we expected. A lot of people maybe expected to be, one of the games of the week. But if you're a Chiefs fan, it was definitely the game of the week for you. 44-21. They obliterated Arizona on the road. 4.5-point favorites, covered that with ease, over 43.5 or over 53.5 hits with ease as well. Mahomes literally doesn't skip a beat, man. He could care less that they traded away Tyreek Hill. 5 touchdown passes for Patty Mahomes, just doing his normal thing. Best quarterback in the NFL. And Travis Kelce, another year older, no Tyreek Hill. Is he going to be double teamed? Are we going to have to worry about his production dropping? 9 targets, very efficient, 8 catches, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then the newcomer, Juju Smith-Schuster, 6 catches, 79 yards on 8 targets. So I definitely like to see the targets for Juju, seeing that he's kind of the next most targets after Kelce was really nice to see. I expect him to continue to be that consistent force where it's like, I think he's going to have 5 catches, 50 yards pretty much every game. I think there are going to be games where he has 100 yards. There's going to be games where he catches touchdowns, but that guy is going to be as consistent comes because he's got Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is going to throw the football. So I was happy to see that. Isaiah Pacheco, we talked about him, 7th rounder, 12 carries. He led the backfield over CEH, who only had 7. CEH salvaged himself with an amazing day fantasy-wise because he had 3 catches and caught 2 of them for touchdowns. But nonetheless, Pacheco, 7th rounder, 12 carries in his first game as a rookie 7th round pick. Like, you don't see that every day.
No, you don't. But that's because they were up by 5 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't up by 5 touchdowns. They were up heavily, and they really started using Pacheco in that time after they had solidified the win. I think they benched pretty much everybody at that time. But I mean, it's still something to be put in a, to produce the way he did with the opportunities he got against starting offenses playing with the backups on your team. It's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side for the Cardinals, I mean, offensive struggles. Kyler Murray, again, unorthodox, only 5 rushes for 29 yards. Running backs were very, very ineffective. I know Connor got the touchdown like classic James Conner does, but classic 10 carries for 26 yards, similar Connor numbers to last year. And with all the injuries on the receiving core, Hollywood had 6 targets, did catch a touchdown on 3 catches, but Greg Dortch led the way, 7 catches, 63 yards on 9 targets. Zach Ertz had 2 catches on 4 targets and also caught a touchdown. So I know the Cardinals are desperately missing DeAndre Hopkins. They're desperately missing Rondale Moore. They should hopefully get back next week. So hopefully they can kind of turn their offense around a little bit.
And the game where I was totally wrong about the outcome, Raiders at Chargers. Chargers were favored by 3 points, and the under hit at 52, right? I was expecting like 30 to 33 type of game. But however, yeah, but I mean, what are you going to do, right? It's the Raiders and Chargers. But the Chargers defense kind of played a pretty big role. They just kind of let Adams do his thing, but they pretty much shut down everybody else. Waller and Renfro got a good amount of catches, but they just held them to like what's open underneath, which is a pretty smart thing to do there. Derek Carr he needs to play better, man. Like, come on, you just got Devontae Adams and you're playing like you just did last year. Maybe he is not who we think he is, he really isn't. He's not. He's got the athleticism. He's got the athleticism, but the game is won up here. And that's the difference between a good quarterback like Tom Brady. These pocket passers, even Mahomes and Allen are good because they can do a little bit of both. But Carr, it seems like he can do both of those things, be a good pocket passer and move around in the pocket a lot, but he just not that good at either of those things.
What's funny is, we talk so much about like not knowing what the hell it is about Derek Carr that like just doesn't make him great because he should have it all. Yeah. And like, I thought so hard about this because I'm like, you look at the box sheet, before you look at Carr's numbers, you see Devontae Adams, their new acquisition, and you see a stat line and you're like, holy shit, like this is it. The Raiders offense has been taken to a new level. Derek Carr's been taken to a new level. And then you see his stat line and you see kind of how he played. And the best way I can equate it to you is, how like for the best players in the world at what they do, maybe even like every profession, the game like just slows down to them where it's at a speed that they're always in control. It's never too fast. And like, I even thought about this for myself when I just played basketball, like pick up and like in high school and whatever, right? Like the game was moving so goddamn fast for me in high school when I was playing basketball. I'm like, oh my God, like, like if I was running down the court on a fast break and trying to dribble, I would like literally forget how to dribble. Like I was like running so fast, right? So it's like the combination of everything to continue to slow down the game to still execute the way that you do when it's like practice or like, when it's not a game. I think that's his problem. I just don't think the game slows down enough from him. Every once in a while, you see 3 interceptions. Like you see things that you're like, Derek Carr, like you don't do that. Why are you doing that? And I just think the game doesn't quite run as slow as it does for guys like Patrick Mahomes, where it's like literally it looks like he's moving in regular motion and the game is like running in slow motion to him.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it dead on. And it doesn't help that the running backs couldn't do anything against the Chargers front 7. And if that happens, like Carr is going to have the spotlight on him. He's not going to be able to do anything. He's not the type of player who can like, work around your team's weaknesses. He has to play to the team's strengths. And the only strength to have was Adams. And that's all he did. That's why the stat sheet looks like Adams had a great day and Derek Carr had 3 picks. But as we mentioned, all the Raiders' strengths and weaknesses, but let's look at Herbert. Herbert looks okay. He's looking like that was a really good first game of the season. He lost Keenan Allen, which he was heavily looking at early in the game. And even Mike Williams didn't really do much, but are we really shocked at this point? Mike Williams comes, Mike Williams goes. It's like you either get 2 touchdowns and 117 yards one game, or you can possibly get a game like this. This might be the most polarizing receiver I have ever seen in my life. Like the skill level is there, but just I don't understand. I can't verbally tell you what happened with Mike Williams this game. Do you have any idea?
No. As a Mike Williams owner in both of my fantasy leagues, probably why I started 0-1 in both leagues. I'm baffled, and it's like, and I don't know. I think I looked at his numbers like the first 5 weeks when he like broke out last year, and his target share was like 26%, right? So it was like 1 out of every 4 throws was going to him. And then as the season progressed, his target share dropped down to like 14%. Now, I don't know if that's just a product of like when somebody is demanding such a heavy target share, they need to be like as reliable comes. Like it has to be Devontae Adams. It has to be like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, right? To where if you're going to target them that many times, they're going to come up with like every ball except maybe one. And I think that was the problem is like, if you're targeting Mike Williams that heavily, he's not coming down with every single ball that like somebody that demands that level of target share should. And then you have a possession guy like Keenan Allen, who like every time you target him, he's getting open because he runs great routes. Why would you target the guy that requires like very complex deep throws where it's like a 50-50 ball, you're expecting him to come down, versus Keenan Allen, who's running like a quick out route or in route and getting open. So it's like an easy catch for him. So I don't know. It's just one of those situations where, like we talked about maybe last year with like DK and like other players, you're just like, why? Maybe he's got limitations in what routes he can run, right? So there's not like every route where he's getting open like Keenan Allen presumably is. So it's like when you're throwing it to Mike Williams, you're almost forcing the ball there. And like Justin Herbert's getting smarter. He's only getting better. So maybe that means he's just going to do that less, which bodes awfully for Williams owners. But there's going to be games this year where they're going to be in shootouts. There's going to be the games this year where Herbert pushes the ball downfield because he has to. And like you said, those are the boom weeks for Williams, where he's going to have like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. But you're right. He's a huge boomer bust guy.
Yeah. I think it's you got to play him. It's not a start and just forget it. It's not a start it and forget it guy. You got to play your matchups. You got to watch the matchups here, especially when there's other players, younger players coming out of nowhere, right? Carter, I believe he played for the Redskins last year, the Commanders. You know, didn't really do much. And now here he comes, 3 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. And they have other players like Parham, who Herbert has openly said in interviews that guy is unstoppable. You know, like in practice, he can't be stopped. But that's going to translate
like 6'8".
to the field.
That dude's like 6'8" tight end. Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah, he's tall. And then, you know, they still have Everett. They still have Everett available. Parham's hurt right now. So, you know, there's a lot of weapons on this team. And I think Herbert's going to benefit from having all these weapons. But, you know, with Keenan Allen hurt now, maybe there's more coming towards Williams. But like you mentioned, he's not a possession receiver. He's a deep threat. Like that is, if there was a label you could put on his head, you would put deep threat. Right. So I think you're just going to have to be more matchup savvy and just look at who he's playing against and see what that team allows as far as like on third downs versus deep passes. And I think that's going to have to be your bread and butter if you're going to openly start him every game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Chargers win that game, lower scoring affair than I think you and I both thought. I was on the over 52, and I mean, again, 43 total points. So nonetheless, Chargers start the season 1-0. Your Super Bowl pick, right? Chargers?
No. Well, yeah, like a excitement Super Bowl pick. There's like an actual Super Bowl pick, and then there's like the what if Super Bowl pick. There might
like that would be cool to see. Yeah. No, I feel you. Well, let's take it to Sunday night at Jerry's World. One of the worst games I've seen the Cowboys play. You know, as far as I can honestly remember. Bucs came into town as 1.5-point favorites. They cover that with ease. 19-3 final. Very ugly game. Under 50 comes in with ease. This was literally the Leonard Fournette show. Another guy that continued to get overlooked in our draft. He kept falling. And wouldn't you know it, the guy who is at the 21 Pilots concert who refused to record on this podcast said, I hate this podcast. I'm never recording on the Only Playbook ever again, has Leonard Fournette. And he just got to sit there and watch him just produce. And man, as a guy that was going against him, it was so frustrating because all he did was just gash 7-8 yards. And I was just like, dude, just stop. For the love of God, just stop. But I mean, unreal game. 21 carries, 127 yards, 2 catches for 10 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but he was a workhorse. He was fed. Mike Evans did Mike Evans things. 5 catches, 71 yards. Oh, he caught a touchdown. What else is new? But Julio Jones, man.
Looking not fresh.
He doesn't look old. I'm convinced that it was the injuries, and like a healthy Julio Jones today is still pretty damn scary. So I don't know how long he can stay healthy. That's going to be obviously the name of the game for them. But if Julio Jones is healthy for an extended period of time, I mean, Tom Brady just got another steal of a weapon. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
You're telling me he gets to play with the top 2 receivers of this decade. He just did all that with Antonio Brown. He's like, let's see if we can get another one of you guys. Just goes and plays with Julio Jones. And Julio Jones not just getting old man targets. He's getting end around
twice.
Multiple end arounds. See, like a casual fan would look at the stat sheet and be like, oh, Julio Jones had an okay game. 3 catches for 69 yards. Not bad. But then an avid watcher knows that if you're getting multiple end arounds, that player still has it in him, right? Yep. So let's see. 4 catches and 100 yards and a touchdown doesn't mean as much as 4 end arounds to me. You know what I mean?
Agree. I agree.
So I'm going to start him. I'm starting him next week. I have Julio Jones in multiple leagues, and I'm going to start him over some players that are going to be questionable decisions on why I'm benching him.
Yeah, especially if Godwin has this hamstring injury now that's lingering, that if it sidelines him for any games at all, honestly, Julio Jones is a must start just based on usage alone in the first week.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady's smart. Tom Brady knows he has literally one of the best receivers of his time.
Yeah.
Now he's playing with him, right? So he's going to use that guy. He's going to force the ball to him. What happened when they signed Antonio Brown? Literally, he started popping off.
Same play calls.
Like, absolutely.
End arounds, deep bombs. It's the same
Yep.
thing. They're just replacing Antonio Brown with Julio Jones.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, incredible for Julio Jones to look that well. Cowboys offense, absolute nightmare. Dak looked horrible. Dak got hurt. CeeDee Lamb was supposed to take the next step. 11 targets, 2 catches for 29 yards. A lot of those targets, like, literally were not catchable. The one thing I'll say about CeeDee Lamb, and I mentioned it in the group chat, was, dude, his body language was so shitty. Like, every throw, every play, I was obviously watching him because I was, like, high on CeeDee Lamb, and I was playing against CeeDee Lamb in my other league. So I was, like, watching him every play, and he was literally just bitching every single play, man. Every single play. So, like, I understand you're frustrated, bro. Like, but you haven't even done anything to deserve the ability to be that frustrated, that visibly frustrated on the field. So, very unfortunate there. Noah Brown, you looking like this year's Ced Wilson. 5 catches, 68 yards on 9 targets. Dalton Schultz did Dalton Schultz thing. 7 catches, 62 yards on 9 targets. Looks like he's going to have to be a focal point of the offense. So, Cowboys end up losing at home 19-3. Dak's situation looms large, so that'll be something that we're going to keep an eye on.
And don't forget, I think Pollard ended up with, like, more playtime than Ezekiel Elliott did, but I think that may be strictly game script. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it was as well. But yeah, I mean, that's something that we've been talking about for like a year and a half now. When's that tide going to turn? So that's definitely something that we're going to continue to monitor and see kind of where that takes us.
And our final game of the week is our Monday night fiasco with the Broncos and the Seahawks. Oh, man. Seahawks were 6-point underdogs at home, and the under hit with 43 points. The final was 16-17. The Seahawks took home a thriller. I've never been so happy for a quarterback that's not a Vikings quarterback, and that's not on my fantasy quarterback, and will never be on my fantasy quarterback ever in my life. You know, just he hasn't started in the NFL in 8 years. Got to start against the player that used to start for that team, you know, and then at the same stadium against a coach that hates that player. It's just like everything just perfect blueprint to watch Geno just smile at the end of it all. You know, Russell Wilson was doing pretty good. You know, he was doing okay. Actually, he was starting off a little sluggish, but then he kind of picked up the pace, targeting Judy deep, you know, and then looking at Sutton more. He just kind of ignored receivers for like the first quarter and a half. It looked like he just didn't even throw the ball to any receivers.
He loved his tight ends. He loved his tight ends. And his running backs.
Yeah. I mean, he looked like check down king. I mean, he's just throwing every pass. He just let it develop, Williams. Let it develop, Williams. It was just like, I was like, man, Russell Wilson, like, you are losing your pep in your step if you keep not being you. You know, we're letting you cook. You just got paid. You're in a new team. Cook. And he's like, nah, I'd rather just get taken.
He's like, I'd rather just use the microwave. I'm like, dude, come on, bro.
Yeah. So, I mean, first game of the season, I mean, I'm sure the crowd's really loud and all the excuses we can use, but it is still Russell Wilson. And I think, you know, there's better days coming for Russell Wilson. And, you know, this whole Gordon versus Williams thing, I think finally Williams has the upper hand when it comes to PPR points in fantasy. Back in the day, it was more Gordon catching passes. He was a really phenomenal pass catching back. It looks like Williams is doing his damage. He did most of his damage late in the game while Russell was checking it down, and Williams was just running over the first tackler almost every time. I think Gordon ended up with more carries, 12 carries versus Williams 7. It does not seem like Williams had 7 carries because he was on the field all the time. You know,
11 catches.
11 catches, you know, and I would much rather have 11 catches than 7 rushes. And then Judy versus Sutton argument is looking really, really, really transitory right now. I mean, we used to think it was just a Sutton show and Sutton's going to get everything and Judy's just going to be the complimentary guy. But it looks like Judy can do pretty much everything Sutton can do. Some people were comparing Judy to like Devontae Adams because they're the same height, same weight kind of thing. And I'm like, no, slow down.
Dude, the Judy touchdown, like the way he broke away from his guy, he's so great. Fast. Like football field fast, right? Not like 40 time fast. That dude like ran away from that guy. Like I was like, whoa, like I didn't know he had that kind of speed.
Right. That's the difference between catching the ball and just closing your eyes and moving forward and having the spatial awareness to know that there's a guy behind you. I got to move my legs. I got to get out of the way. You know, he did all of that. That's what makes you a good deep threat versus just somebody that's fast. So yeah, Judy looking good. Sutton, I'm sure will get more targets. But Judy ended up getting the touchdown to get better fantasy points. And then Gino, what was the quote? Remember the quote?
Yeah, he said they wrote me off, but I ain't right back.
Yeah, I ain't right back. I think that's a Soldier Boy quote, if I can remember.
Is it?
Properly.
Okay.
But anyways, that's so true. Poor guy. We all forgot about Geno Smith. Nobody really thought he was going to play this game as well as he did. He played it phenomenally. He didn't throw a pick, did he?
Nope. Protected the football. No fumbles,
Protected the football. I mean, look at this, man. Like, everybody should just remember the passing. The pocket still exists, and the best quarterback is still the passing pocket quarterback. You got to remember that, and you got to just take the rushes when they're available. You do not want to be known as a rushing quarterback. And then Gino, having all the tools to run, he did take off a few times when it was needed. 3rd and 16, I believe what it was. Got the first down, or at least got 15 yards. These are the plays Gino can do, and I'm excited to see more of this, especially with Penny running the ball as well as he did. The stat sheet doesn't really look as good as how he played because of that one holding call, brought back like a 50-yard run. But I see good things for Penny happening, especially because of all the catches he'll be getting. There's really no competition for Penny out here.
No, Ken Walker's hurt right now. So Penny got 12 out of the 13 carries. And dude, you and I have been on the Penny hype for a while. The dude is so good. Like, when he's healthy, he runs so well and he looks fast. He looks shifty. Like, again, there's a difference between like being good and like you fill up the stat sheet and like when you watch them, they're like jumping out at you. Rashad Penny jumps out to me when he runs the football. So like that dude's definitely an X factor for sure. That is it for the rundown. Again, what a wild week. Let's end the show with our moneymaker. Moneymaker started out really well. Show on Thursday, I took the Bills -2.5 and they destroyed. And then you and I talked about it. We took the Chargers over 52, thinking that Chargers-Raiders game was going to be a shootout. And it definitely had the possibility to be a shootout, but early field goals, a couple of 4th down conversions that they didn't get, and final score ends up being 24-19. So the under hit. So definitely lost that one. And then my 6.3 team teaser was a shit show. I mean, I think had I known that, and this may be my own fault, and I need to be more aware and do research that correlates to weather. Had I known it was going to be a monsoon, I absolutely would not have put the 49ers in that teaser. Like, I think rookie quarterback, I don't care that it's at home. I don't care that it's a bad Bears team. Like, again, it's a monsoon. Literally anything can happen. Nobody was in control. Deebo Samuel fumbled, like somebody that never fumbles. So it's like, I feel bad about that one. But the good thing is it wasn't that game that ended up just being the reason I lost. Even the Broncos last night shit the bed. And so, like, nonetheless, I still would end up losing that. So, again, Moneymaker segment for week 1 goes 1 and 2. I hope to have some more winners. Maybe I'll be a little bit more selective. I did play a lot of props, which this early into the week, we don't get the prop bets out yet. And I played the props and I showed them to you guys and I had a lot of success with the props. So props are always a lot of fun to play.
Did all 4 of those hit?
Yeah, 3 and 1. Right? Three of the 4 hit.
So the Flacco pick worked. You had Flacco getting 0.5 over 0.5 interceptions.
That was the first one that hit. Yards. I hit in like the first drive or second drive. Jonathan Taylor receiving yards, hit by 1 yard.
Yards, right?
12.5 or 13.5, and he had 14. Trey Lance rushing, that hit. Yeah. The only thing that didn't hit was Matt Ryan over 1.5 touchdowns, which he had 1 touchdown, and that was one of the worst games we'd seen the Colts play, especially on offense. So I was close to a 4 for 4. But again, hopefully as the props come out, I can just tweet them out to our Twitter at Only Playbook. It's hard to, again, put out the props on the episodes that we record this early as props change and they don't get put out. So with that being said, hopefully if you guys tailed, I apologize, but I'm going to try my best to make everybody some money as the season progresses. That's it for the week 1 recap episode. Show, thanks so much for joining me. Showbit, hopefully you're enjoying 21 Pilots. Hopefully it's everything you hoped it would be and more. We're the Only Playbook. Thank you guys for all the support. If you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast platform. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at the Only Playbook. Twitter is the only place that is at Only Playbook. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time.